What's up, chuckers? Welcome to Catch This Podcast, the #1 podcast on slinging. So it might be that you found yourself here and you don't know what a sling is. Fear not. We're here to discuss all things slinging, but we also have a YouTube channel, Catch This, with videos explaining all the basics of slinging you can check out to really help clear things up for you. But I can quickly say here, a sling is an ancient projectile weapon. It's made up of 2 flexible cords and a pouch. The ammo includes stones most often, but also lead and clay bullets, tennis and golf balls. It's been used all across the world for most of human history as a weapon for protecting livestock and also in warfare. This whole podcast is dedicated to this fascinating weapon, its history, construction, its use, and we're here to share with you our own experience as practiced slingers. So maybe we should introduce ourselves. Do you want to go first?
All right. Hey, Chuckers. My name is NOOC, and I am recording this from San Antonio, Texas. I've been slinging for about 4 years, semi-seriously. And the reason I got into slinging is really because I'm from Texas, and I absolutely love going out to the shooting range and shooting guns. But then I started having children, and that just became less and less of a priority when I started buying diapers instead of bullets, and just didn't have as much time to go out there and shoot. And so I started playing around with the sling in my backyard and just got completely hooked to where it's not a replacement for shooting anymore. It's its own thing, but it kind of fulfills that inner need to smash things with fast-moving objects flying through the air. So that, I think that's kind of how I got into it. And then, of course, I am trained as a physicist, so I also got into the nerdy side, the science of looking at just the technical elements of analyzing the sling and how the bullets fly through the air, how they leave the pouch. There's a lot of technical analysis, and I'll try not to nerd out too much on the podcast for you guys. I can't actually show you any equations, but yeah, those are kind of the things that I get excited about. I'm sorry, I know I'm a big nerd, but those are some of the things that I really get excited about when it comes to slinging. Is just the decompression of getting out there and throwing things is absolutely the best therapy you could ever have. And then also just nerding out on the technical elements of figuring out how the heck this simple little piece of string that launches rocks could be so complicated. The depth of it is really amazing to me.
Luckily for those out there that aren't quite as technically minded, I'm here for you, don't worry. I'm Kick. I have been slinging for about 5 years. Not all that consistently, honestly, but semi-consistently. I've always had an interest in history, and it was that got me into slinging, really. I was looking, I can't even remember why, I was just looking up different historical weapons, and I saw the sling and thought, that looks a lot easier to make than a bow and a lot cheaper. So I went ahead and made one. I do find the scientific, mechanical engineering side of slinging interesting, but I'm not one for maths. So our conversations will be easier to follow if Nook is dumbing it down for me. So don't worry too much about the maths. Anyone listening in.
Yeah, no, I don't. This is not a math podcast, and I think you're a much more traditional, you're a much more typical slinger in terms of your interest in history. And for whatever reason, almost every sport has a fairly rich history. Maybe not as old as slinging, which goes back to, as far as we can tell, the dawn of mankind. But it seems like for whatever reason there's that tie almost always between slinging and the historical context and that interest in history. So I think that's I'm probably unusual in that I just want to throw all that out and then use modern materials and do crazy weird things with it.
I think that's one thing that's so interesting about slinging, and why I was so excited to do a podcast on it, and why I think it's possible to do a podcast on it, is that slinging covers quite a lot of bases, from survival to the historical side of it to the mass engineering side. We cover a lot of bases, so I think it should be we should have some pretty interesting conversations coming up. But I think if we first maybe explain why are we called Catch This Podcast? It's not just because we're into throwing things.
Although we do like throwing rocks.
We do like throwing rocks. That's very true. But there is sort of perhaps a deeper explanation for the name, and this is where the interest in history for me comes in. Slings, as we said, have been used for a really long time, and most famously, they've been used in the ancient world, in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And there's sort of an interesting sort of quirk with some sling ammo that's been found dating from those periods, with lead sling bullets, glands, which some of them have writing on them or symbols. And there's some really interesting finds that have been uncovered that really show this to be the case. And it's very much like the in World War II, bombers would write messages like for Hitler and on bombs, and that's an older tradition of that than people first realize. Just some examples: during the so-called Social War in 90 to 89 BC, there was a lot of sling bullets found with text on them. Things like a gift for the Asculans, really sending a present to them in the form of a swift lead bullet straight to the temple. Runaways, you are done for, is another good one. There's hell for you, damn you. Very to the point. No sort of question about what their intentions were with that.
Seems like a lot of information to pack onto a bullet.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I didn't find a picture of that one particularly, but it must have been like really crammed on there. Like, these bullets are not large, so
Yeah, I'm impressed that people would go through that much effort to create a mold, just to create a message, just to throw it at somebody's skull.
well, yeah, it's kind of interesting as well, because with as well as text, there was also ones that have symbols on them, like lightning bolts, snakes, and scorpions, which is thought to sort of symbolize how slings would be able to hit very hard and very very quickly. That they come out of nowhere seemingly and strike. But also apparently military units and commanders would also have their own names on them, which I've got to be honest, I don't quite understand that, because if you're throwing it away, why would you have your name on it? Maybe it was just to bragging rights later if you find one in someone's head. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's how they keep score and compete with each other. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. There's no sources that I could find on that, but who knows? But going back to why exactly we're called Catch This Podcast, as a sling bullet in the British Museum, dating from the 4th century BC, which was found in Athens, and has written on it Dexe, if that is the correct pronunciation, I believe it is, which can translate to take that or catch. And I don't know, it seemed like the perfect name for a podcast, Catch This. So we had to go with that.
We talked about how to name this thing, and that seemed like a fun name. I mean, fun in sort of a gruesome way, in that it's written on something that was attempting to kill somebody. Which there's also the fairly gruesome piece of history where I think it was the Romans developed a special tool specifically for recovering the lead, because I guess it was expensive and useful. They were trying to recover it from fallen soldiers after they've conquered a region. They go back and pull all their glands back out of people's bodies, and so it's kind of gruesome. But yeah, we're to be clear, I don't think Kick or I are really into that. That's not the kind of slinging that we're. It's more for entertainment and sport rather than for murdery purposes.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about a very old weapon of warfare, so it's going to come up the gruesome side of things. But as Nock was saying, like, we're going to be more interested, I think, in the sport and competition, and maybe the sort of personal progress side of things, of improving accuracy and distance and those sorts of. That's things that are more exciting to us than the death and horror side, maybe. But
Yeah.
we're going to be touching on it.
Well, yeah, you can't not talk about it. So I think that's part of it. And like I think I mentioned before, there's so much depth for something that's as simple as a little piece of string that launches rocks, or lead glands that were cast with very complicated messages on them. Uh, there's just so much depth and so many different things to talk about, which is really why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's, like I said, that's why I think this is a good podcast topic. I guess the people listening will be able to tell us. But yeah, so shall we talk a bit about what we sort of plan in the future for this podcast?
I think that would be a good idea. Sure. So we've, like I said, we've got there's a lot of depth, a lot of things too that we could talk about, but just from a worldwide cultural perspective, the thing that is the most associated with slinging is the story of David and Goliath from the Bible. So we're gonna get that one out of the way right away. That's gonna be our very first episode. We're calling this what, episode 0, or it doesn't have a number, or
Yeah,
it's just
yeah, yeah,
this is a Hello World episode. It's like not really an episode. It's just us talking about the sling later. So, uh, episode 1, which is not this episode, is going to be David and Goliath, and hopefully we won't go on for 3 hours about it. There's a lot to talk about there, but then from there we're going to go on to talking about some of the other subjects. So I think the next one after that we were going to talk about conflict. So this whole thing of sorry, we're not gonna focus on the gruesome piece of this. It starts with a little shepherd boy killing a soldier, and then it moves on to conflict and riots and how slings are used in conflicts. So you might have to wait a little while before we get into the sports.
yeah. We were actually lying.
Yes, we were lying.
We love the blood and gore.
That's right. So no, I think some of those are just kind of mandatory topics that you can't avoid. So we're knocking those out right away and trying to talk about some of the intellectually interesting pieces of that without reveling in the blood and gore so much.
Yeah,
But so our first episode is going to be about David and Goliath, and I think that there's going to be some good information. I don't know if we're gonna have anything that reveals new information to the world, but we'll talk about David and Goliath and some of the symbolism and the historical culture around the sling that is associated with the story of David and Goliath in the Bible. And then from there, once we've checked that mandatory David and Goliath box, we're going to move on to talking about some of the other more contemporary and other historical topics that are just less known about the sling, or less they're not as associated in pop culture, at least. There's not really a huge slinging culture generally, other than in a few places around the world, like in Guam and in the Balearic Islands. There's so many things we could talk about. I don't want to say we're going to do a specific thing right now, because we're going to get through the first couple episodes, and we may need to do something lighter after talking about little shepherd boys murdering giants and such.
yeah. I think we need to sort of keep a balance. We don't want to be all blood and guts. There's a lot of aspects to the sling that we.
Yeah, we just want to be partially blood and guts. One of the things that I really love about this hobby is that it's such a small group, such a small community, that you can meet a lot of other people all around the world, and it's easy to get to know people who are anywhere. So, I mean, Kick, you didn't say where you're living, I don't think, when you introduced yourself, did you?
That's true. I forgot. I'm, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm British, English, if we want to get specific. But I'm currently living in Finland, so it's kind of interesting finding a time for us to record with various time zones to contend with. But so far, it's been okay.
Yeah, it's been interesting,
I
but
would be
so
saying that because it's 1:30 over here in the afternoon. So
right. Well, it's 5:30 in the morning for me here in Texas, and so we've got a few people around the world now. We've got someone in Australia. We've got people in Texas and all over the United States. I mean, California all the way to Maine pretty much covers continental U.S. And then yeah, Finland. So it's a very international community of people, and that's one of the fun things about it, is just the cross cultural element. No one culture or no particular group of people can really lay a claim to being the ones who own slinging. And so that just means that you get just this huge variety of people that are all into the same sport. So that's kind of a fun element of this. It kind of blows my mind that you're in Finland and I'm in Texas, and we're here having this conversation and recording it and then blasting it out to the world. I'm really curious to see who's going to listen and where they're from, and what kind of international audience takes an interest in this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to sort of focus on that as well. Like you're saying, the different cultures, different countries that have sort of that do sling, that have it as a central part of their culture. Like, I think that's going to be another interesting aspect to look at, and that's also the historical side of talking as well, like past cultures as well as contemporary ones. So yeah, I think
a anthropological element, if you will.
Yes, yeah, it's gonna be really interesting, I think. So
I think so too.
I hope that everyone listening in enjoy it and carry on listening.
Oh, and by the way, we have to say hi, Kix Mom.
Oh yes, yeah. Are we having that in?
Well, I think she would appreciate that, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. I'll leave it in. I'll leave it in the edit.
All right. Well, I mean, she was our very first subscriber on the website before this audio was ever recorded. So I think she earns a shout out.
Die hard fan.
That's right.
Okay.
I think that's probably a good place to wrap this up, since this is just an intro.
Yeah, I think we can leave it off there and
cue the outro.
Thanks for listening. You can find us online at catchthispodcast.com, on the slinging.org forum, on YouTube, and at catch_this_podcast on Instagram. Music by Wintergatan. Catch you next time.